Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is a special video because it is the first video of a 3-part mini-series where you're going to learn how to build a simple yet very powerful text editor using Python and the TKINTER module. Even though this is going to be a bit of an intermediate advanced level tutorial, we're going to discuss every single step together in great detail so that even though maybe you don't have so much experience with Python yet, you're still going to benefit a lot from what we're going to do. So as you can see, I've called this text editor PyText, and it is divided in 3 major parts. We've got a menu bar on the top with 2 drop-down menus, the file drop-down menu, which, as with every respectable text editor, allows us to access the most important functionalities, such as new text, open file, save, save as, and exit. Then we've got an About drop-down menu, which allows us to get information about the editor, for example the release notes, and we see version 0.1 Gutenberg. Then we've got the main part of the editor, where we can write whatever we want, whether it's code or a normal text document. So for example, I could do something like def hello world print hello world. And then, on the bottom here, we've got a status bar, which at the moment shows information about the editor, but it is also interactive. So for example, let's say I will go and save the file, and as you can see, we also got keyboard shortcuts. So let's say I wanted to save this document. It opens up a browser where I can just type the name and the extension of the file. So for example, hello world.py, I can click save. And as you can see now, the status bar says your file has been saved, and on top, right here, we can see that the editor has updated the title of the window to reflect the title of the file we're currently working with. Then as soon as I start typing something else, you can see that the status bar changes once again. Let's now say that I wanted to open up a file that is already been created, and I wanted to edit it. For example, I could click on File, Open File, it opens up the Explorer once again, and let's say that I have a lot of files right here that I just want to look for the Python files. So I can click on the drop-down menu, select Python scripts, and here it is, the source code for the editor, open, and I can now just scroll through the source code using the mouse or using the practical scroll bar here on the right. This is how the editor looks here on Linux, because I'm currently using Linux Manjaro. And this is how it looks on Windows. As you can see, considering that here I'm using another operating system, it looks just much more modern. And that's because TKINTER clearly adapts to the operating system that you are using. I develop on Linux because I personally prefer it, but as you can see, everything works just fine with other operating systems. So, as you can probably imagine, we've got a lot of really cool code to write and a lot of topics to discuss. Before we start coding, I want to remember you, if you're interested in coding in Python and web development, please subscribe to the channel, as there is a ton of new material coming out. And remember to also leave a like and a comment on the video if you find it helpful, it is very important. So, let's get started. Okay, so here we are in Visual Studio Code, and as you can see, I've opened a file called pytext.py, and as Python interpreter, as you can see, I'm using Python 3.7.2, which at the moment is the latest version. Keep in mind that you can use whatever text editor you prefer, as long as you're using a recent version of Python 3. And if you want to learn how to use Visual Studio Code for Python development, I've got a video on the subject, you can find a link in the description. To develop our editor, we're going to use object-oriented programming. And that's because using classes for a specific development context as the one we're in will allow us to keep our codebase nice and ordered, enabling a better separation of concerns between the different parts of the program, and in general keeping everything much more maintainable than it would otherwise be. So the first thing that we want to do is to import TKINTER as TK. TKINTER is part of Python's standard library, therefore there is no need to install it, and I'm using as TK to make it easier for us to access all the modules classes. I also want to remind you that I've got a 2-part introduction about TKINTER that I really suggest you have a look if you haven't already. We're going to write 3 different classes, a class for the menu bar right here on the top, a class for the editor itself, and a class for the status bar. Each one of them is going to be in charge of actually building the different widgets that are going to be needed and to manage different methods to provide the needed functionality to our editor. So the first one is going to be called PyText and is going to be the main class of the editor. Within PyText, we're going to define all the methods that will provide all the text-related functionality, such as open new file, create new file, save new file, and therefore is also going to be the class where we're going to define all the different widgets for the editor itself, which means for this central area in the editor. So I'm going to define the init method, which is going to accept self clearly. And first of all, I'm going to use the pass instruction because apart from the three classes that we're going to build, again, a class for the editor itself, a class for the menu bar, and a class for the status bar, we also need another very important piece of code. As a matter of fact, this is going to be the piece of code that is going to launch our program. So I'm going to write if name equals main, and here we need to initialize a master window, a root window, which is going to provide a space for all the other widgets. It's going to host all the other widgets, and most importantly, is going to run the main loop of the program, which, as you may already know if you've seen my introduction to TK, which again I really suggest you have a look at, is in fact the main instruction that starts all the events cycle that make up a TKINTER program. So master equals tk.tk, and now I can initialize PyText. pt equals PyText, and to this class I'm going to pass master. Then here right below, as I said, I can run master.main loop. So our PyText class is going to be kind of the controller of the whole program. We are passing the master window, which is the root window, as I said, and we're going to manage it from within the init method. So I'm going to pass master to the init method, and I can now specify different properties for our main window, for our master root window. For example, its title, so master.title, and I can give a name such as, at the moment, untitled PyText. And then, for example, I can set the geometry for the window, so master.geometry. And here I can set something like 1200 by 700 pixel. So basically what's going to happen is this. We're instantiating our master window and we're passing it to an instance of PyText. We are running the main loop of events of our program while using the same PyText instance to actually manage all the different parts of the program, okay? So we've now got enough code that we can actually test our program. So I'm going to use the debug window to actually run our program. And so here it is. Awesome. We've got our window 1200 by 700 and it's called, as you can see, untitled PyText. Everything works as expected. We can now start to add the different widgets to our text editor. And of course, the first widget that we want to add is going to be the text area. So I can go back to the code and right here, I'm going to write self.text area equals tk.text, which, as the name suggests, is in fact the widget that we use to manage text. And to this I need to pass clearly the master, which is the main window, and I can also instantiate the scroll bar like this one here in Visual Studio Code. There is a specific widget we can use, which is called scroll bar. So self.scroll equals tk.scrollbar, and first of all I need to pass master, again the main window, and then I need to pass a command. I need to pass the command which is going to tell the scroll bar to actually scroll our text area as we use it. So command equals self.textarea.y view, which means scroll it through the y axis, meaning vertically. But considering that I also want to use the mouse, you see, to actually navigate through the text area, I also want to configure the text area so that the scroll bar will move as I use the mouse to navigate through, let's say, a document. So I can do self.textarea.configure, and to configure I'm going to pass y scroll command equals self.scroll, meaning our scroll bar instance, dot set. Now that we've created the two widgets and configured what we needed to configure, we can actually place them within the interface. We can basically find a location for them within the whole program. We've used grid geometry in the previous videos about TKINTER. This time we're going to use pack. And pack is just another way that we can use to actually place, as we said, widgets within our window with reference to one another. So first of all, I'm going to configure the text area, self.textarea.pack. And so I need to pass the side, right? Which side I want it to be, and I want it to be on the left side compared to the scroll bar. So side tk.left, and now I can configure the scroll bar. So self.scroll.pack with side equals tk.right, referenced to the text area. So let's run our program once again and let's see what happens. Okay, we're clearly making some progress here. We got, you see, our text area, and as you can see, we got a primitive version of scroll bar. However, this is clearly not enough because we want our text area to expand and to take as much space as we want to, meaning all the window. And we also want the scroll bar to take as much space vertically as possible. So let's go back to the code, and here we can set fill, which is the parameter we use to basically tell our widgets how much space we want them to take. So in this case, I want it to take both sides, left and right. So I'm going to use tk.both. And because I also want it to expand as much as possible, I'm going to pass the expand parameter, and to this one I'm going to set true. And for the scroll bar instead, I want it to take as much space vertically as possible, meaning on the y-axis, so I'm going to pass to fill tk.y. Let's run our script once again after we've saved it. And here it is, now we're talking. Our text area has taken all the space that we need. We've got our scroll bar, and let's actually make an example like so to take a bit more of text, and perfect. The scroll bar works as expected. Everything works just fine. As you can see, however, the text font is a little bit small, so it is better if we increase its size a little bit, so that overall it can be much easier to read. So let's go back to our code, and here I'm going to specify to define a tuple font specs, and to font specs I'm going to pass first of all a font family that I want to use. In this case I'm going to use Ubuntu, and a size. 18 is perfect. As I said, I'm currently developing on Linux, therefore I've got also the Ubuntu font by default, which is the one that you can see here in Visual Studio Code. You can clearly choose whatever font you prefer, and to be honest, Windows is going to adapt to whichever font it has available. So even if you decide to select Ubuntu if you're developing on Windows, your operating system is going to find a perfect fit for your use case. So right here on the text area, I can now specify font, the font parameter, and to this I'm going to pass font specs, font specifications. Let's now restart our program, and here it is, definitely much better. So with this, our PyText class is basically finished for now, and we can therefore start to write our second class, the menu bar class. So right here on top, class, menu bar, which is going to have clearly an init method, self, and for now, let's use the pass instruction. So as I've said, the PyText class is going to be a bit like the controller of the whole program. And because of that, within the init method of the PyText class, we're going to instantiate the menu bar. And if you haven't already, you're going to understand why we're doing this in a second. So, self.menubar equals menu bar, and the same way we are passing master to the PyText class, we now want to pass the PyText class to the menu bar, so that from within the menu bar, we can access the PyText class methods. So for example, when clicking on File, Open File, which is something that we're going to do from within the menu bar class, we are then going to trigger a method that we're going to define within the PyText class, which is in charge of managing the textual part of the editor. So here I'm going to pass self, and here I'm going to pass parent. It is also very useful now to create a reference to master, which is, as we said several times, the root window, and creating a reference to master within the PyText class allows us also to access master from within menu bar using parent. Everything is going to be very clear. So we're going to do self.master equals master, meaning this one we're passing as a parameter. And we don't need to use self.master here. It is perfectly fine to do like so. But now we can access self.master from within the menu bar using parent.master. Makes sense. So here I can now instantiate the menu bar widget. Menu bar equals tk.menu, and to this I'm going to pass parent.master, so that this widget can be inserted within the main window. Pretty easy. And now that it is instantiated, we can actually configure master to use it. So parent.master.config with menu equals menu bar. So we are creating the menu bar and showing it in the master window. As we did here with the PyText class, we can specify some font specifications for our menu bar. So we keep using Ubuntu, but we scale down its size to 14. And here we can now specify font equals font specs. I can also add a white space, like so. And so creating menu bar, we've basically created the menu bar itself. We now need to add some drop-down menus, like the file drop-down menu and the about drop-down menu. And we can do that like so. For example, file drop-down equals tk.menu, and to this I'm going to pass menu bar. You see, every widget that we create needs basically a parent widget, needs a window to be placed within. And in this case, we want to add the drop-down to the menu bar. I'm also going to define the font specs as we did for the other widgets. And now that I've defined the file drop-down menu, I can start adding commands to it so that they are shown once we click, like for example, new file or open file. So, file drop-down.add command, and to this we need to add a label, which is going to represent the text that is going to be shown. So for example, new file, and then we can actually add all the other ones. So 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this is going to be open file, this is going to be save, this is going to be save as, and this is going to be exit. We can also add a separator, like you can see, for example, here, you see. So file dropdown.add separator. So now that we've created the file drop-down menu, and now that we've specified different commands, we can actually show the drop-down menu. So here I'm going to do menu bar, again, this menu bar, this widget, and here I'm going to call add cascade with menu equals file dropdown and label equals file. So let's now restart our script once again, and here it is. Awesome! We got our menu bar, we got our file dropdown with all the different commands. Now, as you can see, we also got this particular line, this dotted or dashed line, that as clicked, you see, allows us to actually move the menu. And this might be really useful in certain occasions. But for our editor, we want a menu that is fixed, and therefore we can just specify another parameter right here when instantiating our dropdown. And so I'm going to pass tier of 0. Let's execute the script once again, file, and you see the dashed line disappeared. Okay, so this is legit and actually also pretty cool, right? But as a matter of fact, we haven't connected any command to these labels that we've added. So how can we do that? Well, we can actually pass another parameter, which is in fact called command, and to this one we're going to pass the methods that we want to trigger while clicking on the specific label in the menu. As I said, we're going to define the different methods to manage the text area within the PyText class, and so we're going to access them by typing parent.methodName. So now that we know how to do that, let's actually define the different methods within the PyText class. We're going to implement all the different methods in the next episode of this mini-series, but for now we can actually define them. So first of all, we're going to have a set window title method, which is going to accept clearly self. For now I'm going to use the pass instruction. And to be honest, we are not going to connect set window title to one of those labels, but as you will see later on, this is going to be an extremely useful method, so we can just as well define it now. And then here we're going to define def new file self pass, and then def open file self pass, then def save and save as self pass. So even though they are not implemented yet, we can actually go ahead and reference them from within the menu bar class. So new file is going to launch the command parent.newFile. Then the open file label is going to launch the open file method, and same thing for all the other labels. So save, and here save as. As a matter of fact, the exit label is going to be the only one that we're going to implement in this first episode, and that's because we are going to trigger a method that is a property of the master window, and it is called destroy. So parent.master.destroy, which is going to basically close the program. Let's restart our script. And here we got all the different commands that you can see at the moment are not doing anything, but when you click on exit, here it goes, the program quits. Okay, so that was it for this first episode of this mini-series on how to build a text editor with Python and TKINTER. Thank you so much for reaching the end of the video, I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you have enjoyed it, please leave a like on the video and let me know in the comments below. In the next video, we're going to see how to implement all these different methods to actually provide the needed functionality to our editor. And in doing so, we're going to introduce a lot of really useful stuff about TKINTER and Python. So thank you so much for watching, please subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time, stay awesome and happy coding!